This is what golf looked like centuries ago, and here's what it looks like now. So, how did we get here? Well, it all started in the 15th century in Scotland. Golf was first mentioned in writing back then. The oldest recorded reference of the game dates back to a 1457 Scottish Parliament Act that demanded its outlawing alongside football. King James II of Scotland forbade the playing of games, believing that owning one's archery skills would be a more noble pastime. From here, golf began to evolve. At first, it was quite different from the game we know today. Equipment and rules changed over the centuries, leading to the modern game. And now, we have some of the world's greatest players and the latest equipment making the game more exciting than ever. With the Treaty of Glasgow taking effect in 1502, golf's prohibitions were lifted following multiple more prohibitions during the 15th century, at which time the game was derided as an unprofitable pastime. The Scottish nobility started to take an interest in the sport, which was frequently practiced on fields and along the coast. Golf was not played on conventional courses with a predetermined number of holes in its early years. Rather, using a leather ball, players would set their own goals, frequently aiming for certain landmarks or objects on the course. The player who used the fewest shots to reach the goal would win. Have you ever thought of what the term golf could mean? Well, it is thought to have originated from the Old Scots word gaff, which means to hit or strike. The 13 articles were the first set of rules for the game, and they were written down in 1744 by the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers for their tournament at the Light Links in Edinburgh. Over the next 100 years, more than 30 clubs adopted these rules. The game was seen as a leisure activity, and its laid-back nature allowed players to enjoy both the sport and the unity it promoted. Before the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St. Andrews (RNA) produced the first unified rules code in 1899, there was no attempt to develop a set of uniform rules. In New York City, the United States Golf Association was established at the same time. The RNA and USGA became the two primary regulating bodies of the game when their regulations substantially overlapped. A push to establish sports governing bodies got underway in the 1880s. One set of rules was opposed by the golf community. Rules for competition varied from one course to the next. Golf did not have the momentum or impetus to organize a governing body in order to bring stability to the game until the 1890s. This old piece of golf history, which is currently housed in Scotland's National Library, made the Muirfield Club famous for being the longest surviving club in the golf history. There is no denying that Americans played golf in the 18th century. The South Carolina Golf Club was established in 1787 with the help of a golf equipment shipment to Charleston, South Carolina in 1739. In 1779, the Royal Gazette of New York City published an advertisement for golf clubs and balls. But, unlike other regions of the world where the sport was popularized early, it didn't really take off till the start of the 19th century. The United States Golf Association was established in 1894 to promote the game throughout the nation, which at the time included 267 golf clubs. The contributions made by Scottish troops, immigrants, and expatriates have been crucial to the history of golf. In the 18th century, they were the ones who dispersed the game throughout the British Isles. However, the game didn't begin to become well known abroad until the 19th century. The Royal Calcutta Golf Club was founded in 1829, while the club at Pau was founded in 1856, making these two golf courses in nearby France the oldest outside of Britain. Ireland, numerous other European countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Singapore, and South Africa had all adopted golf by 1880. In the meantime, the game's popularity grew again in Britain. England had 10 golf courses by 1880, and by 1914, that number had skyrocketed to 1,000. Let's now examine more closely at how golf equipment has evolved over the past 600 years. It would be impossible to discuss the history of golf without taking equipment advancements into account. To strike stones and pebbles, golfers initially used sticks, but soon after, they began to make or buy clubs. King James IV of Scotland had a set of clubs created in the early 1500s, and he even named someone the Royal Club Maker. Since there was no standard construction model, golf clubs varied greatly depending on who made them. It wasn't until the 19th century that the idea of forging irons began to yield higher quality products. During this period, handcrafted wooden woods were common, and golf pros were frequently recognized more than their skill in club building than for their skill on the course. For hundreds of years, all golf clubs were made with wooden shafts. Hickory was found to be the best option. Metal shafts weren't introduced until the early 1900s and weren't deemed appropriate for competition until 1929. Until the 1970s, golf companies began to invest in new technologies that would revolutionize the game. Around the same period, Ping introduced cavity-back irons and the first graphite shaft was created. The first golf company to create metal woods was TaylorMade, but Callaway achieved a major breakthrough in 1991 with the release of their Big Bertha driver. The introduction of hybrids in the early 2000s was the last significant advancement for golf clubs. Longer irons were superseded by this new style of club. Golf businesses are constantly coming up with new ideas to provide players with greater accuracy and distance. There are now rules in place from the R&A and the USGA, United States Golf Association, to ascertain whether new clubs are permitted or not. The balls we used to play with have evolved significantly since players whacked rocks along Scotland's east coast, much like golf clubs. It's difficult to comprehend how one gets a ball of this kind to fly straight when the original balls were made of wood. With every shot, the performance would alter significantly because they were constructed of hardwoods like boxwood, beech, and so forth. Early in the 16th century, golfers began to like feathery balls. These were constructed by packing boiled goose feathers into leather. They were costly and hard to make, and this kind of golf ball wouldn't last long and would disintegrate rapidly if it got wet. Nevertheless, up until the middle of the 1800s, this was the common ball type. Dr. Robert Adams invented the Gutty ball in 1848. The dried sap of the sapodilla tree was used to make the Gutty golf ball. It was simpler to create than its predecessor and felt like rubber. It was affordable in comparison to the feathery and opened up golf to a wider audience. Prior to the development of the rubber core golf ball, the Gutty contributed to the growth of golf for 50 years. This marked the inception of the contemporary golf ball. With the addition of dimples, stronger materials, and more standardized building techniques, golf ball technologists have enhanced performance over the past century and a half. Most players agree that the Titleist Pro V1's debut in 2000 marked the final significant advancement in golf ball technology. This produced a long-lasting soft golf ball around the green. It remains the most well-liked ball in international professional tours. Another piece of equipment is called golf tees. The golf tee, although seemingly small, has an intriguing history in the game of golf. Players would construct a little mound out of wet sand at the start of the game to help them get their ball off the ground and make tee shots higher. In the past, golf courses had a little sandbox next to the tee box to assist players in building their tees. Golfers have experimented with many tee designs over the years, but according to the USGA, Dr. George Grant was the first to create and receive a patent for the wooden golf tee. That was in the year 1899. The present form of the Ready Tee was first commercialized in 1922 when Dr. William Lowell patented and sold the invention. The majority of other equipment has a longer history than the golf bag. Golfers carried their clubs around the course for the first 300 to 400 years of the game. To keep them together, it was common practice to wrap them in twine. Golf bags weren't used until the latter part of the 1800s. These golf bags were rudimentary pencil designs. They typically had a diameter of 4 inches and were constructed of canvas. Not until golf carts were in use did improvements to golf bags begin to take place. Golf bags began to expand in size and have more pockets and storage. Golfers have a variety of materials to select from, including cotton and leather. Sadly, if you wanted to walk the course, carrying these golf bags was almost hard. The first lightweight carry bag with a tripod stand to elevate the player's clubs off the ground was released by Sun Mountain in 1986. The golf bags we use now started off like this. There have been advancements made to assist golfers who walk. The double shoulder strap is the most important feature. Although their playing style hasn't altered over time, golfers have always had a distinct look. The players choose their clothes first, taking into account Scotland's weather conditions. To shield themselves from inclement weather, they dressed in heavy materials like tweed. The knickers with high socks have to be the most recognizable golf apparel item. This trend began in the early 1800s and lasted for more than a century. Golfers were required to dress rather professionally in the early 1900s. A single-breasted jacket, waistcoat, long socks with patterns, shoes with two tones, shirts and ties, and knit cardigans would be common clothing items. Golf apparel started to become more casual as the game gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century. Most clubs had dress codes, but all you had to wear was hockey slacks and a golf shirt with a collar. The days of playing in ties and coats were over. Golf attire has become less formal in recent years, even if certain dress codes still exist. Golf apparel is made to support an athlete's performance and weather resistance. Knickers and tweed jackets are so last century. Although the earliest golfers probably loved playing against one another on the Scottish shore, golf tournaments as we know them today are a relatively modern development in the history of the game. There were no formal regulations for the game during the first 250 years that it was played. The gentlemen golfers of Leith developed the first rules of golf in order to host a contest in 1774. The British Open, often known as the Open Competition, was held for the first time in 1860 and is the oldest major competition. The United States Golf Association was established in 1864 to oversee amateur and professional competitions and regulate standards. In 1895, 11 players participated in the inaugural U.S. Open. Although there have been previous competitions, the modern forms of golf tournaments originated in the 20th century. While the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, and European Tour are all less than a century old, the first PGA Championship was played in 1916. And the Masters wasn't established until 1934. I think it's safe to say that golf's colorful history has molded the game into what it is today, from its modest beginnings in Scotland to its widespread appeal across the globe. As we look to the future, we pay tribute to the moments and legends that have made golf a beloved sport for millions of people. So, the next time you tee off, keep in mind the rich history that lies behind every stroke of the game. Thank you for watching.